If you have a cruise schedule, looks like those plans have been put on hold for the time being. And it looks like just about everything has been upset by the approach of Hurricane Andrew, so you'll definitely want to check with your airline, check with your cruise line if you have any travel plans coming out of here in South Florida. Sharks Airline also, I understand, has now canceled its flights from Paradise Island and also to Key West today, but they are flying 2 flights out to Bimini this morning so that people there can make some arrangements to secure their homes and boats and also to evacuate people from Bimini. Sharks Airlines, the amphibious airline, flying a couple of flights out here this morning. That's the latest from my vantage point over Key Biscayne.
All right, thank you very much. That was Frank Motek reporting live in Sky 4 over the Miami River. You saw those boats heading for
major traffic jam out there.
Yeah. Well, we just want to give you another list of phone numbers. We've been giving you a lot of phone numbers, but folks, keep these handy. And if it's busy, keep trying because people are manning these phones. We're going to start here with the recorded, for up-to-the-minute recorded hurricane information. In Dade, you dial 358-8000, code 4444. In Broward, 731-7000, code 4444. Also, we have the help center numbers for you. If you live in Dade, you can call the Channel 4 News Help Center. The number is 379-HELP. In Broward, 523-HELP. We have volunteers manning the phones. Any questions you have on your mind, whether it be what you do with your pool, insurance, anything you have on your mind, go ahead and ask them. They have people standing by. If we don't know the answer, we'll get it to you. We'll broadcast it here live. As you well know, Channel 4 is not going off the air. We will continue to bring you round-the-clock information and update you on Hurricane Andrew. Now, we also have another number we'd like to give you, and this is a special needs number set up by the Red Cross to help the elderly and handicapped people. The number in Dade is 596-8700. In Broward, 357-6402. Again, in Dade, 596-8700, and in Broward, 357-6402. And just to recap, a couple of things going on. We are now in a hurricane warning. It is now, we have Brian Allen with us. Why don't you tell us, give us before we sign off for this hour and come back.
Andrew, right now, 375 miles to the east of Miami. Winds now at 120 miles per hour. That's starting to become a major Category 3 hurricane. We're waiting the info from a reconnaissance flight that is in there right now. Indications are the pressure has dropped about 17 millibars, which is a pretty good pressure fall. More indication that Andrew is strengthening, could possibly be a Category 4 hurricane here sometime this afternoon, maybe the 11 o'clock advisory. If not, probably later on this afternoon. One more thing I want to touch on. If you are leaving the house today and you're going out to do some different things as far as supplies, hardware store, the grocery store, you can get everything that we're doing on Y100 radio. That way you can always know exactly what's going on with us as well. And it looks like also on Andrew right now, Eleuthera starting to feel some of the fringe, so that means Nassau not that far off from feeling some of the beginning of
When
Andrew.
will we start to feel the beginning of Andrew?
I'm guessing right now about 9 to 10 hours, maybe even 11, maybe closer to about the midnight hour as we roll on through. So we've got a great day today to finish up on last-minute things that you did not get a chance to get done.
When was the last time we had such a big hurricane come through the air? Was it Betsy?
We were looking at Betsy in 65. That was the last major hit. But then again, don't forget we had David in 79 that just sort of played with us.
It played with us.
It really played with us and teased with us. So if you look at that, we're talking 27 years since
And I think when you were in the help center earlier, you said a lot of folks, this was the first hurricane for a lot of folks in the area.
Definitely.
So you have to take this very seriously, folks.
Exactly, especially now that we are into evacuation. 605,000 people have to be moved.
Dade and Broward, that's a lot.
Throughout the hour, so don't feel like you've missed anything. I'm Bob Mayer, along with Brian Allen, with our continuing coverage of the coming of Hurricane Andrew. I guess for those of you out there who are just awakening and just joining us, we should point out that Andrew is no small hurricane.
Exactly.
He's got winds now of 120 miles an hour, about 375 miles east of Miami and heading directly our way. Pressure now dropping to 934 millibars, which means he's increasing in strength and perhaps could become a Category 4 hurricane. At what point, Brian Allen, does that occur?
Well, we've got to pass the 130 mile per hour threshold as far as maximum sustained wind. When we say maximum sustained wind, it means just that. Wind blowing constantly at that speed. If we do cross to 131, that would put us in a Category 4. Now, the 8 o'clock advisory this morning had the pressure at 951 millibars, so we're talking about a huge drop in less than an hour. That coming from the reconnaissance flight. We're still waiting to find out what they're finding inside, Andrew, as far as sustained winds at the flight level. That will give us a better idea of what the storm is doing. With that rapid of a pressure drop, Andrew, is definitely increasing. Some of the effects now starting to affect Eleuthera. Still looks to be about 110 miles away from Eleuthera, but the fringe wall out there about 85 miles, 75 miles, so they're starting to feel that now. Just a couple of hours before Nassau on New Providence feels it, then becomes Andros, and then up to the north for Freeport.
Well, let's get a couple of comparisons here if we can, Brian. If we in fact do hit this Category 4 level, which it looks like we're headed for, what would that make Andrew like? Like what other hurricane?
Well, Hugo was a 4 when Hugo came on shore in Charleston, South Carolina. But Hugo was also a much larger hurricane. But still, whether it's small or large, we're still talking about the same type of winds and the same possible destruction.
Without question, though, Miami has not seen anything like this in 25,
it's been years.
28 years.
It's been years. Like Teresa and I were just talking right before we all switched over here. We had David Flirt with us, but it's been since Betsy in 1965 that we have really seen some devastation from a hurricane. And if you think about the way the population...
Okay, we're back here. We're standing by for the National Hurricane Center. It's 15 seconds after 1 o'clock here. Dr. Bob Sheets, I guess, is going to give us the latest advisory here. 145 miles an hour was that last report. All right, let's go down and we'll take a breath here and let Bob Sheets take over here for just a minute or two.
Good afternoon. Hurricane Andrew continues on its course toward the southeast Florida coast at this hour. The aircraft is now reported the pressure is now dropped to 922 millibars. Winds are now near 150 miles per hour, estimated at the surface. The eye of that hurricane will likely move across somewhere here in South Florida sometime in the early morning hours tomorrow. I'm Bob Sheets from National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida.
Brian Norcross, it seems like every time we hear from Dr. Sheets, the millibars, the pressure within that hurricane goes down, and that means the winds are going up.
And that's how they do it. All right, we'll talk more about that in just a second and what that means. But Frank Motek is now live with us in Sky 4. Let's check in with him.
Yes, Brian, the situation on the Julia Tuttle Causeway much better than it was what we saw a little while ago at 395 and I-95. Traffic is heavy but is moving. No problem whatsoever. One lady in that Platinum Lincoln, if we can focus on that for a second, got out and flagged out a Metro bus after she broke down there, and she's well on her way. Now had tied up traffic here coming off the Julia Tuttle Causeway. But as we swing over to Miami Beach now, we see that traffic is moving rather heavily but steadily here on the Julia Tuttle Causeway as people clear out of Miami Beach, and traffic not too heavy heading toward the beach right now as people finish up unfinished business or for whatever reason still heading over there. But traffic is very heavy coming off the Julia Tuttle Causeway, but it is moving. No problem, no accidents seen here at all as people evacuate Miami Beach on the Julia Tuttle. So the Julia Tuttle right now is your best bet compared to the MacArthur Causeway, where they're still trying to clear the accident involving the boat that came off a trailer there at 395 and I-95, Brian.
Frank, could you head over across the Julia Tuttle and maybe get word back to us, even if we have a little trouble getting your live picture? But we understand that people will not be allowed at this point to get back to Miami Beach. And I saw traffic heading to the east there. But Miami Beach and all of the barrier islands out there are an evacuation zone. And the word we have from Metro-Dade Police as of 1 o'clock is that access to those areas would be stopped. So if you could head across the causeway, maybe you could gauge if people are indeed being allowed or turning around or what's going on.
We'll check it out right now, Brian, and get right back to you.
Okay, Bob, who do we have here?
Yeah, you know, this closure poses some logistical problems. For example, you might have some elderly person on Miami Beach whose family needs to go to pick them up, for example, and they may have difficulty now because of this denied access to these evacuation areas. We've got Wendy Jackson now, the Dade County Aviation Department, standing by. Good morning. Good afternoon, I should say. What is the status of the airport at this hour?
It is business as usual right now. We're requesting that passengers check with their airlines before they come out here to make sure that the flights are scheduled as usual.
Do you have people at this point coming to Miami International Airport to seek shelter, Wendy?
No, we don't. Not as of now.
What about people who get stuck at the airport? People at the Hollywood International Airport told us earlier that they are going to evacuate, that they do not consider that structure to be a safe structure. How would you describe Miami International as a structure in terms of safety? And what of the people who will be stuck there when the storm arrives? Will you evacuate or not?
No, we won't evacuate. We'll handle that as we would any people that are here on a layover or something like that. In terms of the structure, there are areas here where we will gather everybody and they'll be safe from the storm.
So it's a shelter for those who are there to fly and can't, but not for others?
Correct.
Wendy, do you have any idea how full that parking garage is there at the airport?
It's pretty full. It's almost packed. So if people are coming out for scheduled flights, they should provide ample time to find parking. And if we have people that are considering parking their cars there, as you have suggested to other people, we're hoping that they would reconsider because it is almost full to the max right now.
Well, that was going to be my question, because we don't want to send anybody there if it's full. Although I do anticipate that at some point this afternoon, nobody's going to be arriving any longer to take a flight out because they're just not going to be flying airplanes in here in case they might get trapped here, I would think. Now, do you have any word from any of the carriers on what their plans are for this evening, for instance?
No, we don't know that as of yet. Each of the individual airlines have their own plan. Generally, what they'll do is they'll fly their aircraft to another airport. But as of right now, I couldn't tell you their exact plans.
Wendy, are you getting a sense at this point that there is more than business as usual, that there are, in fact, people headed to the airport in an attempt to fly out of this endangered area?
Well, it's difficult to say because Saturdays and Sundays are typically busy anyway. We're handling over 100,000 passengers on these weekend days during the summer. So it's difficult to differentiate the traffic right now.
All right, okay. Wendy Jackman talking to us live from Miami International Airport. We want to get those emergency hotline numbers on the screen for you again. We can't repeat these enough. They're very important. In Dade County, the number is 596-8735. Now, earlier in the day, we were referring to these as rumor hotlines. It's the same number, just a changed name. It's more in line with what the lines actually are going to do. In Broward County, you can get information by calling 357-8454. And in Monroe County, the number is 1-800-427-8340.
But maybe we should stress who should call this.
Okay.
Don't call these numbers if you're just wondering. If you know you live on the beach, you know you live in an evacuation zone, and you just want confirmation that you're supposed to evacuate. Yes, you are supposed to evacuate. It means every single person living in these evacuation zones we've been talking about is supposed to evacuate. So don't tie up the lines. Let the people that can't, for whatever reason, fend for themselves, have an emergency and need to get help or need to get information to Dade County, let them use those lines. Brian Allen just brought me information. Again, this is just the latest out of the aircraft here, just confirming what Bob Sheets told us just a few minutes ago.
That it's getting worse.
That it is getting worse, and we may have winds there now at 150 miles per hour. We'll get to the map in a minute, but really looking at the map, we don't need to look at the map. No. We know the storm is coming. There's no question it's coming. Tell you what, we'll take just a quick glance at, if we could, though, is the satellite picture, just to show you how close this storm is. There you see South Florida, the far left part of your screen. You see the first bands there right over Eleuthera and Great Abaco right now, and continuing to move in. Dave Bloom, are you with us from Broward County?
Yes, and I missed the last part of what you guys were saying because we've been in a briefing with Jack Osterholt of the Broward County Emergency Preparedness. He is the county administrator. Some pretty important things that he had to say about what's going to happen here after this storm blows through, and I know that's not the principal concern right now, but let me just sort of run through what he said. He's saying you can't be safe anywhere in Broward County. That they, and I don't know if there's a meteorological basis for that or not, but that they're taking a worst-case scenario right now, assuming that this hurricane will hit somewhere in North Dade, and that would mean that Broward would be the worst hit by the northern brunt of this storm. What they're saying is that they expect that they say that the National Guard is on alert right now, and that there have already been plans made to call in the National Guard to provide for security, to prevent any looting after the storm comes through, and also that they've got Red Cross reserves already coming down from Orlando and others throughout the country ready to come in. They're also saying here in Broward that at some point this evening, when the winds reach about 40 miles per hour, they're evacuation provided by the county, that is those buses that are now running east to west, getting people off these areas where they should be evacuated, will stop because it will no longer be safe for them to run the buses in this area. They're saying at that point it'll be too late, really, for anyone to evacuate, and that they will urge people just to hunker down, in their words, and that at that point it's just you've waited too long. And so what we're saying is if you can evacuate now, you ought to do so. They're saying that people are starting to show up at the shelters here in Broward County, that the traffic seems to be picking up a little bit. They tell us that they've eliminated the tolls on the turnpike in order to get traffic flowing very easily north, that they had some reports of some jams up in Lantana, and that they're also stopping traffic lights in Broward County. What they're doing is they're bringing in law enforcement. They're not having the lights flash red or green or orange. They're just bringing in law enforcement, and that way, if you get a lot of traffic, the law enforcement can just wave it all through. Let me just run by my notes here and see what else.
Dave, let me jump in here
Please.
just to reinforce why the concern in Broward County. And I think if we go back to that satellite picture again and just kind of draw a line with your eye there from the eye of the hurricane over to South Florida, you can see that it's more or less on a line with Dade County. And in the same way in the 1926 hurricane, that the devastation, total devastation with the 1926 hurricane happened in Broward County, in spite of the fact the eye came over in Dade County. That's why this concern in Dade County. But as Dr. Sheets, who we're going to check in with here in just a second, has been telling us, any little deviation up or down with that thing could imperil, with that just total devastation, any of us or points even north into Palm Beach County, the slightest amount of readjustment. So that's what that's all about. Let me go back to you for a second, Dave, to wrap up for just a moment, because we do want to go to Bob Sheets.
Well, absolutely. Certainly Broward County is preparing for the worst. Let's take a look at this map, if we can, really quickly, of the evacuation area. If we've got time to do that, to show the map of the region where you should evacuate in Broward. I guess we don't have that at our disposal.
Okay, I'll tell you
right
what. Let's go to Bob Sheets, and we'll get that said, and then we'll come back to you
Fine.
as soon as we talk to Dr. Sheets. Bob, are you with us? Dr. Sheets?
Can you hear us?
Brian.
Okay. We see, well, we've heard now further deepening of the storm, lowering of the pressure.
922 right now, and winds we estimate about 150, so that's just below the Category 5 strength, which normally is around 920 millibars.
And now, is your advice to treat this as a potential Category 5 storm?
Well, it's, again, we're talking about here 4 or 5 miles per hour difference in wind, and so I think everybody is essentially doing the maximum response at this stage in any case.
We notice on your, we were just showing a satellite picture here, I see behind you there. Are you getting any reports out of the Bahamas yet?
Well, I haven't seen any directly from there. I suspect they're getting the stronger winds are now moving across there with the rain bands that are coming across. The tight winds, of course, around the center of the storm are probably not being experienced yet in any island location.
Dr. Sheets, let me broach something that we have not broached all morning, but I think we probably reached that point. A Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane, the size and strength of Andrew, we are told, has never passed over a major metropolitan city. Do you have estimates, I hesitate to say, but models indicating loss of life for a situation like this?
Well, it's based on how people respond, and from what I'm hearing, people are responding, getting off the barrier islands and so on. And again, we want to urge, as you have been doing there, to make sure that those people take refuge when this hurricane comes across. If they're going to be on the roads, then they need to get off the roads by sometime around midnight tonight.
Well, that's the figure we've been using here as well, expecting tropical storm force winds. In other words, those 40-mile-an-hour winds that Dave Bloom was talking about in Broward, where they stopped the evacuation process in the midnight time frame. And do you see any reason to think that the storm might increase in speed that would change that time frame at this point, Bob?
Well, I don't think so. We're almost to the worst case potential situation. We can hope that it goes through one of those down cycles at the time it approaches, but that would strictly be a hope. And of course, we are going to see some fluctuations, plus or minus 20 miles per hour.
Do you have, Doctor, a best case, worst case scenario in terms of the number of deaths that we might expect to see here?
Well, no, in terms of loss of life, we don't have any way of estimating that. I think the great majority of people are going to take the right action, get away from the water, and then from the wind, you don't normally have large numbers of lives. Yes, there will be some, but hopefully everybody will take refuge, not wander out in any way.
Yeah, we are really sort of at a loss here to tell people what to do, because we're at a point, I mean, besides evacuate, but I mean, the people that have done the right thing in Broward County, they are telling them now that all of Broward County is at risk, and I guess people in the western part of the county that maybe have done everything they can do need to understand that even inside their home, it's time to have a point to go to as a point of last resort inside your home if you should have some failure with this kind of wind speed. Isn't that right?
Well, that's good advice at the peak event of the hurricane. Indeed, if you get 150 mile-per-hour winds in some of those areas. Now, due to the frictional effect, it's not likely that those sustained winds will be inland across that area right at the surface. But some of those trees will be coming down across there. And certainly during that peak hour or peak hours as the hurricane passes, that is a wise thing to do, is to go to those interior rooms, small rooms.
All right, Bob, we'll let you go, and thank you very much. We'll check back in with you shortly. Can I answer a question here that we had about electricity? Yes, turn off the electricity, turn off the water, turn off the gas to your home before you evacuate. As a matter of fact, we advise you to turn off the electricity to your home at the point that the power goes out, even if you stay. Because when the power comes back on, it might sputter and spurt and peak and do damage to appliances. You don't need to unplug anything. Just turn off that big main breaker in your house. If you, for some reason, don't know how to do that, then go around and unplug things. But, you know, your televisions, your refrigerators and all that sort of thing. But if you know how to turn off the main breaker in your house, do that when you evacuate.
Okay, I've just gotten word here of 3 Red Cross shelters that are closed. They're no longer accepting evacuees. We're not sure why. It may be just because they are filled up. That we have not been told. However, do not go to the following Red Cross shelters: North Miami Beach High School, University Lakes Recreation Hall, and Alapata Middle School. Once again, North Miami Beach High School, University Lakes Recreation Hall, and Alapata Middle School. Those Red Cross centers are no longer accepting new arrivals. Frank Motek is flying above Miami Beach in Sky 4, where he sees people evacuating by foot. Frank?
That is correct. Right here in the heart of Miami Beach on 41st Street, Arthur Godfrey Road, where we see about a line about a block long of people heading out to be evacuated, we believe. They're marching on foot about a block long altogether as they, looks like they're carrying pillows, some of them, and sacks of things to take to evacuation shelters.
We have lost Frank Motek's microwave relay to the station. Let's go back to Dave Bloom at an emergency shelter. David?
Okay, Bob, the point that I wanted to make before was, let's take a look at this map, and I've kind of lost my communication with Steve for a moment, but let me just show you the map here of Broward County evacuation area. There you see it. And let's just delineate this once more. That entire red area is where you should plan on evacuating. Again, as we've said all day long, that's Palm Beach County line, south to Atlantic Boulevard, anything east of US 1 in that stretch. And then from Atlantic south to Sunrise, anything east of Dixie. And then from Sunrise south to the Dade County line, anything east of I-95. Now, keep the map up for a moment, because what I thought I would do is just read off the cities that includes, because that's a lot easier way for you to know where you're living. That means that you evacuate if you live in the easternmost section of Deerfield Beach, all of Lighthouse Point, all of Hillsborough Beach, the eastern half of Pompano Beach, all of Sea Ranch Lakes, all of Lauderdale by the Sea, virtually all of Fort Lauderdale, the easternmost section of Oakland Park, the easternmost section of Wilton Manors, virtually all of Dania, the eastern half of Hollywood, and all of Hallandale. Plus, again, any mobile home anywhere in Dade County. And again, as we just mentioned a few moments ago, we just had a briefing here at the Emergency Preparedness Center in Broward County, where they were quite frank about saying, listen, nowhere in Broward County are you safe from this. Even if you're not going to get hit by the storm surge, the winds might kick up, and certainly they have to such an extent that, as Brian just mentioned, you've got to figure out where in your house you're going to go to be safe. Brian, Bob?
Look, David, we recall when Hugo passed over that there were at least 1 or 2 evacuation centers that lost their roofs. So,
well, yeah, they learned a lot of lessons, as a matter of fact, from Hugo about our evacuation centers here. And I've been doing a lot of work along with our producer Scott Sievers here for our hurricane specials, working with those people. And I know that they have done exhaustive inspections of the South Florida evacuation centers and have taken some off the list because they didn't meet the criteria, and if there was any question, they took them off the list.
Okay.
So we feel much better about our evacuation centers than they did in the Charleston area.
And Bob and Ryan, let me just mention something else as well. Just to reiterate, we did have 4 shelters here in Broward that earlier in the day were not open, either because they didn't have the personnel or that they weren't sure that they were going to use that shelter. Every single shelter in Broward County is now open. Unlike in Dade County, none of them are full. Hopefully that means that they've just got a large enough capacity. They're telling us that some of these schools can hold as many as 5,000 people. So there's plenty of room left in these shelters. And they told us earlier in the day, even though they expect to have to evacuate some 430,000 people in Broward County, almost 500,000 people, they say that there's going to be room in these shelters. So if you don't have any place else to go there. There will be a space for you.
Dave, an interesting question here that we're just not sure of sitting here in the studio. Is part of the problem that people don't know where the shelters are, do you believe? And we just went through an exhaustive list of Dade County shelters to try and get people to grasp onto at least one address as a place that they might be familiar enough with to go ahead and go there. Even if it's full, they would be sent then to some other place and they'd have contact with somebody with information, because we have a list of shelters here, but I dare say that we're talking 1% of the people that might have that same list of shelters in their own possession.
Well, absolutely right. Every single time we make reference to this hurricane preparedness brochure that Broward County has someone's talking in my ear, that Broward County has taken out. These people don't have this list. We've got the list, and I don't know if right now, if we've got time, they're probably talking to me in my ear and I can't hear them because somebody else was, but if we have time to show the list of the Broward County locations, maybe now would be an apropos time to do that, since we've just told you where you would want to leave from. This will give you an indication as to where you might want to go. But
Dave, can I ask the control room, do we have this on do we have Broward County shelters in our system like we have Dade County shelters?
We do, Brian.
Okay, I'll tell you what, why don't we get that set here? Let's take that off the screen. Let's get that set here and come back to you. I understand we have some information from Hank Tester, and then we'll come back to you with that, okay?
Sounds good.
Yes, Channel 4's Hank Tester is standing by live in our Miami newsroom now with the latest about the happenings at Miami International Airport. Hank, what's going on?
Well, we just got back not too long ago, and basically what we found out there, if we can roll the tape, that it was very crowded. The officials that we talked to out there were saying things like, well, gee, this is business as usual. The fact that we just have big crowds on the weekends, you just heard earlier. But we can tell you that there was a lot of folks working into that area that really wanted to get out of Miami. We talked to some folks that said their main purpose was to get out of Miami because of this storm.
When Walt Houghton looks at baggage carts on the runway at Fort Lauderdale's airport, he sees potential
Okay, the wrong tape there, but essentially when we were out there working the story, people were walking up to us and saying, well, do you know when the storm's going to get here, because should I get standby? We were providing some advice. Now here it is. From the airport, you heard it just a little bit earlier, but let me tell you once again that the airlines themselves will make the determination whether or not they're going to fly. Number two, the FAA will then oversee the whole operation. If winds get to be too heavy, crosswinds, etc., then they will shut down the airport. But that might not happen until later on tonight. So if you have a ticket to leave Miami, if you're planning on flying out, it's like 6, 7 o'clock tonight, there's a good chance you might get on an airplane. But what you probably won't have a good chance of doing is driving out there now, parking your car, going and buying a ticket and flying out of Miami, or also being on standby for an earlier flight. We ran into a lot of people that were very frustrated about that. So that's essentially what's going on. If you have a ticket and the plane's going to leave at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you have a good shot.
Although I would suggest that anyone that needs to go to the airport for a flight, go ahead and go out to the airport. And on the chance that you might have a seat on an earlier flight, on the chance that they don't bring in the plane to do a later flight.
Right.
I mean, anyone that has to leave, there's no reason to sit around in your house watching television when you can be at the airport trying to get on any plane leaving. I think that would be the best advice.
All right, thanks again, Hank.
You bet.
Marianne Murciano is at the Dade County Emergency Operations Center. Marianne, what's happening there?
Hi, Bob, I just got here, and these people are issuing these orders, these evacuation orders, and this is serious. The director of the Office of Emergency Management says that we are only 5 miles away from this being a Category 5 hurricane. As you probably know, they cannot stress enough that everyone who has to evacuate should evacuate. This is a maximum evacuation order. They will not ask any more people to evacuate. Everybody who needs to evacuate should do it right now. They specifically stressed that the people at Seville Place, as you probably are very familiar with, that area that has had a lot of construction problems, they suggest that those people get out immediately. There are at least a couple of hundred people there, they say, that are whose lives are at risk right now. So the word from here is, once again, evacuate. If you're in one of those areas, figure out where you have to go. If you cannot find family, if you don't have anybody to stay with, then go to one of the shelters, but do leave the area. They're expecting, they don't want to scare anybody, but they say that it's very possible and very likely that buildings will be toppling over in some areas. So people need to leave. Shutters are not, just clearly not enough. They need to leave the areas that need to be evacuated.
All right, Marianne, you said they don't want to scare anybody yet. At this point,
I think we do want to scare people.
Because we got this is clearly a life and death situation, and if you are not fearful, if you are not frightened at this point, and you live in Dade, Broward, and Monroe counties, then you're in trouble.
Because you don't understand the gravity of the situation. It is an unprecedented event in the history of the world. Never before has a storm of this strength hit a major metropolitan area. It's just that simple. There is nothing in your experience, in your knowledge, to compare this event to. So all you folks that have been around here a long time, don't compare it to some hurricane that you knew about before. Don't compare it to the 1926 hurricane that in a large measure wiped the city out. Do not compare it to any event before. It is an unprecedented event.
You're not missing any words here.
No. I mean, when we came in today...
Yes, I mean, you started to mince words earlier today.
Well, yeah, because we had a 120 or 130 mile an hour storm comparable to 1926. And since 1926, the building codes have been improved, and we're talking about a storm at the limit of the building codes, but we know in general they're better than that level. But now we're at a point that the normal roofs that we have on houses are at risk, not that they're all going to blow off, but that I would be very surprised in the area where the strongest part of the storm hits to find any building without damage.
Jeez.
Any
right.
building.
Ileana Bravo is on Miami Beach now. Ileana?
Yes, Bob, this is indeed a full-scale evacuation now going on here at Miami Beach City Hall, one of the pickup sites where people from the beach were told to show up if they have to leave the area and go to shelters. There are now four Metro buses here picking people up. They have been here throughout the morning. We are told that these buses are going to Hialeah Miami Lakes High School, a shelter that has capacity of 3,500 people. So obviously they have not filled that shelter up yet, and these buses are en route there now. The way that they communicate, the evacuation officials here from Metro Bus and from Miami Beach Fire Department, is via radio. They head to a shelter. If it is full, they go on to the next. It is a very organized plan, and it seems that the people on the beach, in fact, a couple came up to me and said, thank you, because we saw your station putting out the information and we rushed right over here. They are heeding the warnings. They are coming. They are taking it seriously. We understand that some people are even walking here. Whatever it takes to get here, they're getting off the beach.
Ileana, are you with me, Ileana?
Yes, I am.
We see buses arriving and departing now, and I'm sorry if you already said this because we were preparing what we're going to do next year. Is it seem now that they're coming with some frequency?
Yes, now the buses are moving. Whatever glitches were in the system before seem to have been worked out, and the people, although they were waiting here for a while, probably up to 2 hours, are finally now getting on their way. And these buses are going to Hialeah Miami Lakes High School, which is a big shelter. It has a capacity of 3,500 people.
All right, in talking to people there, are you getting a sense that these people obviously have been motivated to come out there? Are they aware of other people, neighbors, friends, neighbors that have or have not been motivated?
Most of these people, go ahead, sir, are tourists. So they were on in hotels rather, on the beach. A lot of the residents, you're right, it's either they're staying because they feel they're safe or they're not. But most of the people here have told me that it is chaos at their apartment buildings or the neighborhoods where they live, that most people have spent the morning just organizing themselves to get out.
All right, maybe we should take another quick look while we're talking about Dade County here. We are going to get back to Dave Bloom and Broward, by the way. Let's take a look at those maps.
Let me make a note here.
Okay.
As we go to the Dade County evacuation map, Brian, that we've just gotten word that the Miami Heart Institute is at this hour evacuating.
Okay. All right, let's go through the map here. Now, we're going to have to help me here. We're looking at North Dade here, and the borderline for that area is the FEC railroad track. In other words, the railroad tracks that run along US 1 up through Aventura. So everything there, all of the Aventura area, Aventura Mall, of course, all those condos will be evacuated anyway, but follow that railroad track down through Miami Shores, kind of goes through the middle of the shores there, and then comes on down to downtown Miami, where you see the little glitch going in, the little blob going into the west there, and that is downtown Miami and the area around the Miami River and out along the Miami River and out the Okeechobee Canal, which is right along Okeechobee Road there, to Lejeune Road, out along South River Drive and North River Drive, right along the 112 Expressway and the 836 Expressway. So that's that area between 112 and 836. All right, let's go down to the central part of Dade County. Of course, all of the beaches, needless to say.
And we've lost our color differentiation, which is good, because it doesn't matter what color it is at this point.
All the same colors here. Now, Quail Roost Drive, Southwest 200th Street is the bottom line there, and then US 1 up to Sunset. Where it kicks in off of US 1 is South Miami, downtown South Miami there at Sunset, and then on up Bayshore Drive and Brickell Avenue, all the way up into downtown Miami. So Brickell, Bayshore, Sunset over to US 1, then US 1 South to Quail Roost. Now, here's the big one, South Dade County, all of South Dade County. The little part that doesn't show up there is evacuated, but there's nobody living out there. It's Everglades. So all of South Dade County, all of Homestead, all of Florida City, all in the evacuation zone. And that means move now.
That's south of 200th?
200th Street, right, Southwest 200th Street.
We are about to go now live to the Dade County Emergency Operations Center, where we're going to get a live update on exactly what's happening there and what Dade County officials are planning to do next.
I think we're 30 seconds away.
Oh.
Yeah, okay. Are we back? We're 30 seconds away from talking to them there. And what they're doing, by the way, just so you understand the mechanics of this, so that everyone gets the same information at the same time, and they don't have to do it over and over again, at a certain time on the clock, they just go ahead and start. So now we're 10 seconds away.
Yeah, so they don't hear us. We have to time it right.
We have to time it right. Hear them, and 29 on our clock, by the way, is when I've noticed they start. Right. So it's 27, 28,
now get ready.
29, go.
Good afternoon, I'm Virginia Sanchez, and welcome back to our hourly briefings from the Emergency Operations Center here in Southwest 87th Avenue, and 56th Street. With me now are Kate Hale, who's our Director of Emergency Management. We have Armando Hernandez from Florida Power and Light, and also Mike Carroll from the International Red Cross, who's going to bring us up to date on our shelter situation. Kate?
Okay. The hurricane evacuation process is going slowly. We still need to see a better response to this evacuation. We need people to be out there and to be moving. In particular, I would like to mention an area of Dade County that's been ordered to evacuate called Seville Place. It's my understanding that they are not abiding by that evacuation order. They are in construction that has problems. It is not worthy of a hurricane of a Category 1 level, certainly not of a 4 or potentially the 5 that we're looking at here in Dade County. I would plead with you people to please get yourselves and your family out of the area. You've been ordered to evacuate because your lives are at risk. Please do not stay. Are there any questions from anybody?
How many people are you talking about at Seville Place?
Probably about a couple of hundred, up to a couple hundred. There may be less. I'm not sure what the total number of evacuees are, but at this point I know that there are significant numbers that have failed to evacuate.
Is that the only place that's not in one of the coastal areas that needs to evacuate because of construction problems?
That's correct. That's correct.
What does that mean for the areas around Seville Place? You're talking about possibly a lot of debris.
That's very possible. That's very possible. And other areas, other residents in that complex that could be affected are part of that evacuation order. So even though their structures may be worthy of withstanding the storm, because they're going to be so impacted by the debris, they've also been ordered to move because they're going to be up against a tremendous amount of debris.
Can you talk a little bit about the buildings themselves? You were talking earlier about the possibility of them collapsing, some of them.
There are structural problems in the buildings which have not been corrected at this point.
Not at Seville Place, in other areas, Miami Beach, Key Biscayne.
Well, we're talking about the potential for the storm surge and erosion, and when erosion occurs, it can undermine buildings and homes. We saw this in Hugo. We certainly saw this in when Gilbert struck in the...
We're going to take it back now. We've just gotten word that there has been a mandatory evacuation ordered for all of the Florida Keys. And Brian Norcross, how significant is that?
Well, it's the reason that happened is because, in spite of the fact, I don't think that's any anticipated change in path here. It's just now that the storm has strengthened sufficiently that it's going to be close enough that they are anticipating potential at least Category 3 conditions in the Keys. And the problem is, of course, that the Keys are so low that there is no way to get people off. Now, here's our map of the Keys, and if the storm comes over Dade, the center of the storm comes over Dade or Broward County, remember the winds, the strongest part of the storm is to the north because the winds are rotating counterclockwise around the system. But when they come around counterclockwise, then they're going to pick up the water in Florida Bay and push it over the Keys the other way. So just because the storm doesn't hit the Keys directly like the 1935 storm does, doesn't mean that they can't have inundating water, and that's why they've ordered this evacuation.
But aren't we looking at a possibly chaotic situation here? We already know that
it's not a practical issue.
They can't evacuate the Keys.
Right, it's impossible to evacuate the Keys. I think Billy Wagner's thinking, and I hate to try and anticipate his thoughts here, but I think he's thinking that we have to make it clear that this is a life-threatening situation in the Keys, and people that might be in a marginal location need to, at this moment, take all action to find a more secure location. And what he is also saying is he's in some ways making the same statement that they made in Broward County, that there is no place safe.
All right, but I don't want to be a fear-monger here, but if we just, take this scenario one step further, if all of the Keys, or a significant number of the people who lived on the Keys, attempted to evacuate by car, got on US 1 and headed north, isn't there then the danger that they could be caught in their car?
Well, I'm less concerned about that in the Keys than I am other places, because the Monroe County Sheriff's Department has a very specific plan there to close the Keys in 6 places. They divide the Keys up into these 7 chunks. And at the appropriate time, when they determine that it's unsafe to go on, they close the bridge and you don't go any further, and you're going to go to the best location that you can get to from where you're stuck in the Keys. So they're not going to let you pile up somewhere on Jewfish Creek or Lake Surprise and up there on that road to Florida City, or they're not going to let you pile up in Key Largo or somewhere on a bridge. They won't let that happen. They'll stop the evacuation soon enough to require you then to go find some kind of shelter, and they'll direct you to and I don't want to use the word shelter, because at that point it's refuge. Some sort of last resort refuge that may be in that area, whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's a hotel hallway, or whether it's a hotel bathroom. That's the situation that people that are caught on the highway are going to be in.
All right, well, good point to throw this in. We just got word from the hospital in Key West. They would like us to help stop the rumors that hospital is closing. The Key West Hospital is, in fact, not closing. They want you to know, however, that they are not a hurricane shelter. They will be open and available to treat those who need to be treated.
All right, Dave Bloom, let's go back to you in Broward County with Art St. Amand.
Well, right, Bob and Brian. Let me make one point first before we talk to Art, and that is this. Just what you said about the hospitals, they want us to make the same point up here in Broward, and that is that the hospitals are open, but people have been streaming there as an emergency shelter. They're not an emergency shelter. They're for emergency medical needs. Okay, Art St. Amand, we just talked to you about half an hour or so ago. What are your concerns at this moment?
Well, my concerns at this point are people who are sitting home now, who should be evacuating in an evacuation zone, who are looking at that storm and saying, I'll wait, I'll wait, I'll wait. And when they see the rain and the wind begin to blow and say, maybe Art was serious, and then start to move and get themselves trapped out on those roads and roadblocks and so forth, that's the one thing we want to avoid.
And you're saying that at that point, they shouldn't even go.
That's right. If they haven't done it, at that time, what they should do is find the safest part of whatever structure you're in. Be it a condominium on the beach, be it another building, find the safest part of that building. On the beach, I'd suggest getting off the lower floors into the core of the building, perhaps a stairway, something like that.
But this is only a worst-case scenario. I mean, what you're really saying is get in gear right now.
That's right. That's correct. We can't sit around and wait that long. That's a dangerous situation.
Jack, your operations director, I guess he is now, was saying that there's no place safe in Broward County. Why is that the case?
Well, you're talking about a Class 4, potentially a Class 5. You're talking about gusting winds in excess of that. You're talking about exceeding the building codes of Broward, which is the best building code in the country, by the way. 120-mile-an-hour wind force. You can't build buildings to withstand these kinds of winds. So what we're going to see when it approaches those wind speeds and with the gusts, we're going to see a lot of physical destruction perhaps beginning to occur as things fall apart and start tearing and blowing around.
And we've tried to give people some advice, but obviously you're an expert on this. If you live in an evacuation zone, you ought to get out. If you're in a mobile home, any place in Broward County, you ought to get out. But what happens if you're in the western part of the county and you would like to think of yourself as being safe, but with a storm of this size, you're really not? What do you do?
Again, I think at that point we won't have time, for example, for them to go to an airport or jump in a car and drive out of state. They're going to have to hunker down in that area. And hopefully that the winds and rains, they'll be able to survive the level of water as well as the wind force. And whatever part of that house is the strongest, most secure part.
And what generally would that be?
Well, they might end up in the bathroom. They might end up in the closet. At the strongest part of the building. Usually bathrooms are tiled and concrete and so forth, and they have facilities in there. That's an ideal place. And we got to get through this critical part when the winds are at their most severe.
Now, I know that this bears repeating since a lot of people from South Florida have not experienced this before. You might go through the first part of this storm and think that it's over.
Oh, you're assuming the eye is going directly over us. Yes, that's right. We'll see a deterioration, if the eye passes over us, we'll see a deterioration of the weather. More and more severe until it peaks out, then total calm. Even the sun might come out if it's daytime or the moon and stars, but the other side of that eye, and I don't size up eye, it might be 15, 20 miles, when that passes immediately from dead calm, in very peaceful, quiet conditions, you'll get immediately, again, the other side at maximum wind, and it will then gradually decrease. So that's a dangerous thing. Do not go out in the eye.
We're probably getting a little bit ahead of ourselves right now, so right now your advice is if you live in an evacuation zone, get out of there.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, Art.
No question about it.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Fred, producer, do we have these evacuation shelter areas to go to? I hope we do. And we talked about trying to show where in Broward County you can escape from this if you're in the evacuation area. And again, I ticked off the cities a few moments ago, but basically here are the areas where you can go in Broward County to try to get out of this storm, the evacuation centers. And again, they say that they're going to have plenty of room. So you've got Boyd Anderson High at 3050 Northwest 41st Street. Now that should be, I'm just trying to look at my map here, that's just east of Northwest 31st Avenue and just north of Oakland Park Boulevard. Castle Hill Elementary, that is, I'm trying to, bear with me here, that's just south of Oakland Park Boulevard and just west of 441. Now let's keep rolling here, and this is going to take a while, but we did this for Dade County some time back. I think it's probably important that we do this here as well. Coconut Creek High, 1400 Northwest 44th Avenue. That is just north of Coconut Creek Parkway.
Today. Well, we've been a lot better, John. Are you here in Miami or are you elsewhere?
I'm in Miami International, sir.
Okay. All right, what is the status of U.S. Air operations?
Okay, all flights are going to operate up until 5:40. Our U.S. Air Flight 62, which departs Miami at 5:40, will be the last departure of the day.
Are you still having incoming planes then? At what time would incoming flights be canceled?
The last inbound flight should terminate, which makes up this outbound flight at 4:39, and then redeparts Miami at 5:40. That should be the last inbound and outbound of U.S. Air.
Do you have any seats left on the airplanes?
No, sir. Everything is sold out, and the lines are from one end of the airport to the other.
That's true at U.S. Air. Is that true at the other airlines?
Yes, it is. We have people that are coming out for travel who have tickets for tomorrow, for Tuesday, for Wednesday. They're all packing the airport trying to exodus South Miami, and it's just impossible.
Do you have any idea of, you have service into Fort Lauderdale, do you not?
Yes, sir, we do.
Do you have any idea what the status is up there? We understood that airport was going to shut down but we got like, conflicting information there. Do you know what the status might be there?
No, sir, I sure don't. We have been so overwhelmed just trying to deal with our situation in Miami. We have not been in contact with our Fort Lauderdale office.
Okay. All right, John Atkins, thank you very much. If anything changes, we appreciate your getting back to us. And if we have any representatives of any other airlines that could give us a call here, we'd appreciate that, especially American Airlines. Brian Powell, I think your name is, with American Airlines, who I've been in contact with on occasion. If you could call us here at Channel 4, we would love to know, because American is the biggest carrier, of course, out of Miami, and Delta out of Fort Lauderdale. We would like to know for folks that might be heading out of the airport. But clearly, I think we can say that the airport is no longer an alternative for getting out of South Florida. And the alternative now is to find a safe spot for you. Now, let me see here what I wanted to do. I'll tell you what I wanted to do when we were talking to Rob Pierce at the Port of Miami. Let's take a look at that satellite picture, if we could. There you see it. There you see the eye of the storm as it's approaching Eleuthera there. Out ahead of the eye, the very strong winds. And I guess that the people at the Port of Miami and the cruise ship industry think they can sneak by here, because the interesting thing about hurricanes is that it's very calm out ahead of the storm. Then all of a sudden, when you hit the edge of those squalls, you get these peaks of wind, and those winds can be very gusty in the 40-mile-an-hour range, and then they'll die off, and you can clearly see the bands of the storm out ahead of it. So those are already approaching the Bimini's, it looks like, and it looks like a band there over Nassau. But I guess the cruise ship people think that even late this afternoon, they're going to be able to sneak out and maybe head west, because the cruise ships do move fast enough. Do we have Dr. Sheets available for us now? Okay. Bob, you're in with us here?
Yes, I'm with you, Brian.
Okay. We just had a report from the Port of Miami, and you might have heard what I was just saying there, that are the cruise ship people in touch with you at all?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Are the cruise ship industry people in touch with you folks down there about the status of the storm?
Yeah, they have been in the past. I know that they have been there, and indeed, I believe most of them are leaving port there.
Yeah, they're leaving port, but they're leaving port late this afternoon. It's just a little surprising to me that they wouldn't push that up and go ahead and move on out, I guess.
Yeah, I suspect they're going to move out, parallel to the coast, and
right.
So as they get out there, they've got a few hours to get either north or south away from this hurricane core.
I see now that you have put up hurricane warnings on the west coast of the state as well. Is that in deference to the strength of the storm or the movement of the storm, or both?
It's both. As a matter of fact, we're forecasting it will move across the southern portion of the peninsula, and with a hurricane like this, basically the Everglades is water out there, so it's going to maintain its strength, perhaps lose maybe one category in strength. So we'll have impacts on the west coast, Marco Island, Naples, Fort Myers area, and so we put warnings up there from Venice southward.
Now, we talk about the storm surge on the East Coast, the mound of water that the hurricane pushes out in front of it, which is really the deadly part of the storm, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But I know from talking to you that the West Coast can also have storm surges, surprisingly.
Yes, in fact, because of the shallow nature of the southwest coast there, their storm surge is going to be almost what it is here on the East Coast, even though that the winds circulating around the hurricane are going to have a short period of time to bring those waters in, say the Marco Island area or the Naples or into Sanibel, Captiva Island area there. But the surge is expected to be somewhere between 10 and 14 feet over there, assuming this continues to move as fast as it is.
All right, let's go over just once again here. Once it becomes clear where the eye is going to come ashore, how far north of there do we expect the devastating winds? I don't mean the hurricane force winds, I mean the devastating winds where we're concerned about any building being at risk.
Well, in terms of, say, 100-mile-per-hour winds, you're going to look at a zone that may be something like this. So if the core came across to Miami, then you would experience that up into South Broward County. If the core comes across to Broward, you experience that up into Palm Beach County.
So you're talking about maybe 30 miles?
30, 40 miles, maybe a little bit more than that in some areas.
Okay, would be the devastating part of the storm. Now, one more question, Bob, about the Keys here. We did talk to Billy Wagner, and I guess they're doing a pretty good job down there in moving people out of the Keys. But the Keys, in spite of the fact the storm is moving to the north, will still experience storm surge, will they not?
That's with the center of the storm. If it does pass as we expected north of the lower Keys, then their surge will come off of the Bay area. And so that will be a little bit better for them down there.
But still, the low-lying areas all along the Keys are expected to have significant flooding.
I think so. That's a good chance that that'll occur. If they're at the extreme south side, if they get maybe this area of the hurricane, then they probably wouldn't get a whole lot of it from that.
All right, Bob, thank you very much, and we'll be back with you continuously here. Susan Wallace is standing by in our Miami newsroom. Susan, you have some information.
Brian, we just want to update you as we're getting information. Miami police have put out a fax that says basically it is in full mobilization, and they're asking us to let off-duty officers know that police personnel that are normally assigned to the Bravo shift, which is the afternoon shift, are being asked to report to Miami Police Department about 15 minutes from now. So make note of it. If you are off-duty Miami police officer normally assigned to the Bravo shift, you're being asked to report to the headquarters at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Same for Metro Police. I actually heard this report on the radio earlier that Metro Police has put out the call for all off-duty personnel to report to the police department. Now, when they go into these Alpha Bravo shifts for both departments, both Miami and Metro, that basically means they have half the staff on duty at any given time. So if anybody is, thinking that perhaps police will slack off during the storm, you're dead wrong, because half the department will be on the streets, at least be on duty. And I understand within both police departments there's a limitation. Once those winds reach a certain point, or once they hit a certain speed, they actually demand that all marked and patrol cars get off the street, because it is simply not safe for them or for anyone else to have them on the road. But again, let's repeat, Miami police are going into full mobilization at this hour. Any off-duty officer who is assigned to the Bravo shift, the afternoon shift, asked to report to Miami Police Department about 15 minutes from now at 3 p.m. Same for Metro Police. So I would suggest they do so, and that's the latest we have from here. Brian?
All right. Thank you, Susan. We're going to go back into the shelter mode here in just a second. But I'll tell you what, before we go to day shelters, I want to talk about evacuating before we get to the shelters, and then we'll go through that list, because we just don't want there to be any confusion out there on where you should go, because all you need to do is pick one of these. You still have plenty of time here this afternoon to get onto that shelter. But what do you have here? Let me Brian Allen is here helping me out. All right, can I still head north? Susan Wallace, by any chance? Is Susan still in? Okay, all right. I'll tell you what, why don't you go into the newsroom and see if you can get an answer to that question, and then we'll pass that along. The question was, can I still head north? We heard that the turnpike was backed up at the toll booths, but either through amazing coincidence or through a little leverage, we were able to get the toll booths open so the traffic could flow, but we don't know when and how serious that is, and maybe when our next Metro traffic report, we can, and we're 9 minutes away from that, so maybe we can answer that question at that time. Now, if you are going to evacuate, I want to put a lot of questions to rest about evacuating. First of all, you need to prepare your house as quickly as you can, but don't, in the effort to try and prepare your house, endanger your life, because we're getting to the point here this afternoon where we know that people are going to start getting afraid because the weather is going to start to deteriorate. We'll probably have some squalls approaching here early this evening, and that is going to increase the level of anxiety in people that are evacuating. So, in other words, don't threaten yourself in order to save your property. You can go out and replace that property. But we do have lots of problems with people with pets. And what are you going to do with your pet? Well, what you're going to do is, if you have to leave the pet at home, and if you're planning to go to a shelter, you must leave the pet at home. You're going to find a room in the house. A garage is an excellent room. A bathroom is a room. Prepare the floor. Leave lots of food in there. And don't tranquilize the pet, and let the pet fend for itself. If you have a bird, use the special bird dispensers, but leave plenty of food is the bottom line. Don't leave vitamins, mineral supplements. Don't leave anything like that. Just plain old food, and let the pet fend for himself once again. And, of course, leave plenty of water. And the list from Metro-Dade reminds you, never leave a cat and a dog, even if the two are normally friendly. Keep the pets separate. Put them in separate bathrooms as you need to. Okay, now, about evacuating. One other thing, if I didn't say this, is before you leave your home, turn off the water and turn off the power to your home, because a lot of things can go wrong. Jerry Helfman welcome, is here with me. Did you just come in? Have
I
you?
just came in, and I was getting my
Dade.
home ready. And let me ask you, based on something
Okay.
you were just saying, I live in an evacuation area. Should I fill up, or should anyone fill up their bathtub so that when they go home, there's water there waiting for them?
That's an interesting question. I don't know that we've ever considered that, but there's certainly no reason not to. There's no downside to that, because assuming that we have access to the evacuation areas, and we can anticipate not, after the storm, having immediate access to the evacuation areas for a lot of practical reasons. One is that we can anticipate a lot of roads closed because of trees down, just on,
but I mean,
on
after
that level.
a couple of days, you'd think you could get back home.
And hopefully there would be some water there. But the other reason we might not have access to evacuation areas is the county needs to go in and evaluate the structures before you're allowed in your house. So just because your house may look good from the outside, that doesn't mean that there isn't a major structural damage to the house. And there will be a massive effort after this storm to go into areas with large-scale destruction to evaluate property by property so we don't lose any more people that go back into unsafe structures.
Right.
Okay? All right. And I know you've been around Dade County a while. You can help me here. And we're going to go through, we'll go through a little more quickly than we did before, but this is the list of Dade County shelters. Ignore the line across the top that says evacuation level A. We're in a total massive evacuation mode. So we're in A, B, C, and D. And what we're going to try and do is go through here and just give folks something to latch onto as a place to go.
Right.
So of these two, the easy one is North Miami Beach High on Northeast 167th Street. That's the 167th Street is the road that 163rd Street Mall is on. So just 95 east to North Miami Beach High. Very easy to find in North Dade. All right, let's go on to the next page here, because the second one is a little bit harder to find. And if you get to North Miami Beach High and it's full, they'll direct you to the other one, and we have plenty of time for you to get settled and get in place there. Miami Coral Park High is right out there at Galloway Road and Southwest 16th Street. That is the one just south of 836. Is it not? Is it the Westchester area, I believe, is it not?
I think so, yes. And Brian, if you're in a house, you know, that doesn't have, if you don't think your windows are secured properly, if you don't think you have the proper storm shutters, are you better off in a shelter, or just doing the best you can?
Well, no. At this point, you are indeed better off in a shelter. With the storm.
Because yesterday you were saying only the people.
Because we had a Category 2 storm yesterday, and here we have a Category 4 storm. You are better off in a shelter. But I would not encourage people from West Dade to go to a shelter. What I would encourage you to do instead is find somebody close to you or find a hotel nearby. And I would hope that we would have some cooperation, and we'll get back to that shelter list in just a second, but this is a very, very good question. I would hope that we'd have some cooperation from owners of major buildings in the western section of the county to make them available to people to just hunker down in the hallway. Because we don't expect in West Dade to have a massive flooding problem that would endanger people being on the streets. So it would be more a tree limb, blowing debris kind of thing that would block people from getting back to their home. But people that have not protected their windows need to protect themselves somehow. And the three ways I can think of off the top of my head, if you can think of any more, that would be fine. But the three ways I can think of is, one, to find a major building nearby, and hopefully, although it's a Sunday, maybe we could, get some help with these people to actually use interior hallways to put as many people in there as possible. There wouldn't be any food, there wouldn't be anything.
You don't want to be in a house that does not have its windows protected.
That's right. You do not want to be in a house. The second alternative would be if you have a neighbor, and this is a time to invite in your neighbors, friends, in spite of the fact that you may have protected your property and the guy down the street did not, and your feeling may be, I'm safe and I'm going to sit it out here. This is not the time to be in anything but generous, because this is not a potentially threatening situation. This is absolutely a life-threatening situation. And the third thought is, if you absolutely can't do anything but stay in a house with windows in it, and the windows unprotected. And I would say this, as a matter of fact, even if you're in a house with protected windows, identify in the center part of your house perhaps a closet or two to have them ready, get all the junk out of those closets, where if things start to give way, that's where you're going to go, and you're going to pull your family in there
or
around
a hallway.
you. But I'd like to see you in the smallest confined place.
How about a
with solid
bathroom?
A bathroom would be fine if it doesn't have a window. Many people have survived hurricanes, severe hurricanes in the past, by getting down in the bathtub, because if something came down around them, odds are it would fall over the bathtub.
Is Susan Wallace with us still? No, maybe
Susan,
not.
Susan is in the newsroom working on
Because she
something.
can relate an experience when she comes back. She was in Cancun.
She was in Cancun.
And she was in a bathroom.
In Gilbert, right.
And left for a while and came back, and the bathroom was gone. But for a while, that was her safe haven.
Right. The bathtub, in spite of the fact you may have it filled with water, the water is a primary problem, but is secondary to safeguarding you. I can tell you of stories in 1926 of people that put their children in laundry tubs, those big old lead laundry tubs that we used to have, and covered the laundry tubs with mattresses. And that was a way. So mattresses are a wonderful thing. Blockading a hallway, blockading a closet with a mattress. Have that ready. I'm not saying that even as a storm approaches, that you should be running into the closet and sitting there, because the duration of the intense part of this storm is going to be a matter of a few hours, and it's going to be absolutely abundantly clear to you when that part of the storm arrives, because you will not be able to hear or think about anything else. Inside your home, inside anywhere, inside a shelter, the roar of the storm and the train whistle sound. You know, in tornadoes they talk about freight train sound. And this is a combination of a freight train and a whistle. And the whistle is caused by the incredibly strong winds going in tree branches.
It's a very scary sound. I was a young child when, in '65, was it?
Hurricane Betsy.
Right. And I remember that howling for hours and hours. We should probably get back to the shelters, but I want to ask another question. I hope I'm asking questions that a lot of you want answered. Now, what if you live 5 blocks, 10 blocks from an evacuation area? If you're not included, are you safe?
If you're not included,
you're within blocks.
If you're not included and you're in a safe structure, you're better off staying there. The thinking is the evacuation areas are worst case. So they've added a little bit.
They've created the buffer.
I'm losing my voice here, but they created a little buffer in there.
I understand.
And not that you wouldn't get water, but the idea is that the water would not be life-threatening, where getting yourself out in amongst the traffic, out in amongst the chaos, would potentially be more life-threatening than just making way to be right where you are and staying right where you are.
Should we go back to some more shelters
Let's go back to the shelter list. And, Brian Allen just showed up here. Maybe if you could just go through this list a little bit, help them with the locations, you know, at least the key ones, because what we want to do here is we want to get folks to key on just a few of them. If they only have one, they can go there, and if that's full, they'll be sent somewhere else.
Right, but the shelter, the important thing to know is the shelters will always direct you to the next available.
And I can tell you that when they're full, if they're all full, they'll still take you, okay? They're not going to turn anybody away. They'll pack people in there shoulder to shoulder. Nobody will be turned away even if the shelter is full. However, if one is at the full level and other ones are not full, they'll go ahead and send you over there. But once we get to the point where everything is full, then you're not going to be sent away.
And isn't it correct, Brian, these shelters that we're showing people, there's no correct shelter for you.
That's
if you're
exactly
at a friend's house and one of these is near you, that's the one you go to. You're not going to be, it's not like by district or anything like that. You go wherever you want. So these addresses just tell you where you can go, and they're available to anyone regardless of where you live.
Exactly, and that's why as we go through this, let's just try and go through and pick out some obvious major streets, because I want to motivate anybody that thinks, well, God, I just don't know where these places are. Let's go ahead on to the next one here and see if we can come up with one. There's one that's very, very simple.
A lot of people should know where that is.
Right, I-95 at the 62nd Street exit on the line there between Liberty City and Little Haiti, Edison Center area in Miami. Tell me what,
a throat lozenge.
We have a lifesaver person here with a throat lounger. Thank you very much. All right, let's go on through here and let's see if we just can't find somewhere where if the street just sticks out.
Address, as you know, it's
on
Ludlam Road.
And it's just south of, let me get my numbers straight, 132nd Street up there, which is the Gratney Parkway. So it's just south of the Gratney Parkway, and it is, if you just take the Palmetto to Ludlam, come south, it's a large cement school. Be a wonderful place to ride out this hurricane, because I've been in that school.
And James Bright Elementary, or Bright James Elementary, is that also?
James Bright Elementary, I think.
That's also in Hialeah, I think.
Dunbar Elementary. That's just up here in North Miami, isn't it, Brian?
Northwest 20th Street, right. No, it's not North Miami. That's right in Miami. That's going to be Fifth Avenue and Northwest 20th Street.
It's not far off.
That's not far from us here. That's in Overtown.
It's not far off I-95.
Right.
I've been to that school before. Okay, Charles Drew Middle School, Northwest 60th Street. That also would be not far off I-95, would it not?
That's exactly right. That would be, well, 17th Avenue and I-95. If you went up 17th Avenue from 112 to 60th Street, you'd be right there at
Hialeah Middle School.
I can't help them in detail there. I mean, it's on East 7th there. Okay, 187th Street. We're into the North Dade addresses here.
You would take I-95 and get a little bit west. That's a pretty easy.
I can tell you that
find.
the key is if you just have a question, you're in your car, you're listening to us on Y100 now, and you don't know where to go to the area up around the Brandsmart store at 47th Avenue and the Palmetto Expressway. Many of these shelters we're showing you here are within 2 or 3 minutes driving distance of that area.
Let me ask you, while we're showing these, Brian, I've been listening as I've been packing up my family this morning to our coverage, and as far as the South Dade area goes, you're talking about evacuation, and you said everything up to Sunset Drive east of the highway is evacuated.
That's correct.
That's the whole area around Pinecrest Elementary and that area.
East Kendall.
And is that because that's a flood zone?
That's because you know there are a lot of canals in there.
Right.
And as that water gets pushed up in Biscayne Bay, pushed up in the bay, it's going to push up into those canals, and that's going to expand out, and so that's why that area is evacuated. Besides the fact, as you know, as you head out that way, it is very low. There's not a hill in sight out there. Now, in 20 seconds, we're going to join Bob Sheets here at the National Hurricane
All right, real quick,
Center.
before we do that, let me tell you, we've just been handed this release from Dade County. The Florida Highway Patrol is reporting that there are major traffic delays in Broward due to hurricane evacuation.
All right, well, let's give them the details on that, but let's go ahead and join Dr. Bob Sheets at the National Hurricane Center now.
Good afternoon. Hurricane Andrew continues on its westward course at 16 miles per hour, maximum winds of about 150 miles per hour. It's now thrashing its way through the Bahamian Islands at this stage. Will be affecting South Florida sometime late tonight or early tomorrow morning. The center of the hurricane will likely cross the coast somewhere in southeast Florida here, somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, maybe as early as 6 a.m. Hurricane warnings have now been issued for southwest Florida from Venice southward through Flamingo. I'm Bob Sheets for the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida.
Okay, Bob, thank you very much. Let's go back to Jerry here.
Finish this up,
This question has come in, and you're going to have the answer to this. I'm not in an evacuation zone. What should I do? I think we've covered some of that. If you're not in an evacuation zone, you need to find a safe place, and hopefully it's your home. If it's not, it's someplace nearby, and we would urge you not to use the shelter addresses that we were showing you. Can I still head north? And that's where I think we have information here.
Well, yeah, because the Metropolitan Dade County has issued a statement saying there's traffic delays in Broward. The Florida Highway Patrol is urging all individuals leaving Dade County not to use the Florida Turnpike northbound in Broward County because there is horrific delays in that area. They are asking you to seek an alternate route, preferably I-75 to the Sawgrass Expressway and then north to Palm Beach County. If you go that way, you're just going to get caught in a horrible traffic mess, and it's going to take you a lot longer to get out of town.
Normally, I would urge people not to get on the highway.
Not to head north. You're better off heading west.
Well, not in this case. And I was going to say, normally I would say don't head north. Because in the past, for instance, Hurricane David, a bunch of people headed north and the storm went north.
Right.
But in this case, we can say with significant assurance this storm is not going north. The last road you would want to get on would be Tamiami Trail or Alligator Alley.
Okay.
Because
unless, of course, you're going to some safe house there. Or...
Unless there would be some safe location. But I'm talking about Tamiami Trail west of the metropolitan area to get out of town. Or
so
Alligator
that shouldn't
Alley.
Be your alternate.
Right. That should not be your alternate. Now, we know we have massive traffic jams on the Turnpike. No doubt that's going to start. Except I-75, you get on I-75 there, and you're going to end up going over Alligator Alley, and we don't want to get you going across Alligator Alley.
Well, now what about the Sawgrass? Well, okay, because they're advising people to take I-75 to the Sawgrass Expressway.
All right, they're saying in Broward County it's tied up. Now, this is unfortunately this is a Dade County announcement, and
Flooding could you see? I mean, knee deep, or you're talking about
in the evacuation zone, the only reason it's an evacuation zone is because it's deemed to be life-threatening, not just inconvenient. There may be many areas that are flooded but are not evacuated because it may ruin some carpets or ruin some furniture.
Right, I think people
But there's no presumption that necessarily just because you're not in an evacuation zone that you're not going to have flooding.
So the purpose of an evacuation zone is to tell you that your life is threatened if you stay there.
Right, your life is potentially threatened. That some part of this storm, depending on where that most intense band of the storm comes ashore, that the evacuation zone is anticipated to be inundated with life-threatening conditions in that band. Now, unfortunately, we can't predict with sufficient precision where that band is going to occur, whether it's going to occur in South Dade or whether it's going to occur in North Broward. We just can't predict that well because that's only a distance of, 60, 70 miles.
Right.
And it's just, this distance, even a couple 100, 250 miles away, it's just too far out to know with precision where that's going to happen. So, but what we can say with assurance is that that band of significant devastation is really the word, is going to occur in South Florida somewhere, and we just don't know where, and that's why this evacuation zone is put in place to tell people that you are a potential risk of your life. Now, we have a very good question here, because in spite of the fact we keep saying if you live in the evacuation zone, you have to get out. People think, well, but I'm not going to be flooded because I live in a high-rise, all right?
I live in a high-rise,
Right.
and believe it or not, some people are staying there.
The question is, you said people who live in high-rise should evacuate, but I live on the second or third floor. Am I safe? And the answer is, if you live in an evacuation zone, you are not safe, and you're not safe for a couple reasons. There is, if you have, let's say you have a high-rise, and especially along the coast, since the evacuation zones are along the coast, that has shutters on it. First of all, none of the shutters that you have are designed to withstand this kind of wind force that we're talking about now. Okay, so the shutters are at risk, and as soon as the shutters are at risk, you are at risk in your apartment.
And you talked earlier about most windows withstanding these winds, that it was the flying debris that was going to break the window, but now the winds are getting to a point where most windows won't even withstand these winds.
Well, especially most shutters won't withstand the winds. The windows may actually be stronger than the shutters, because the shutters are an add-on feature that the wind can get behind somehow and really pull on, where the windows are built into the frame of the house and whatnot. So that's the first thing. The winds with this storm are sufficiently strong that your shutters, the integrity of your shutters, is at risk. The second issue is that even if you're on the second or third floor, if you are on part of the beach, what we can expect here by tomorrow afternoon, by 24 hours from now, this storm is going to be essentially over 24 hours from now. And what we can expect by that time is a total inability of the government to function, of the governmental agencies and the police and the fire and the emergency people to function at all within those beach communities. So we don't want to have people out there. We don't want, when the National Guard, and I assure you that some part of South Florida is going to have the National Guard taking care of things after this is over.
Well, talking about, I'm sorry to interrupt, but talking about government not functioning, we understand that at 3:30 in just about 10 minutes, Governor Childs is going to make an emergency announcement. Don't know what it is, but we'll certainly bring it to you live as soon as
no doubt it'll be an emergency declaration,
Right.
which just gives the governor and the state government power to require people and to enlist the National Guard. No doubt that's what it'll be. It'll be a declaration of a state of emergency for South Florida, I'm sure.
You know, something else about the condos. People think the higher up they are, they're safe from the water, they're safe from the storm surge. Wrong.
That's absolutely
the winds
wrong.
are much more harsher the higher up you go.
The earth actually causes friction on the wind, and that slows it down. The higher you are, the stronger the wind.
I heard you say that if the winds are 150 miles an hour at the ground level, if you're on the 9th or 10th floor, what can we expect those winds to be like?
Possibly 180 miles an hour. Devastating winds, clearly well beyond the capability of shutters to withstand. But the main issue here is, I must say, and I hesitate to say this, but I think that we have to be practical. We have to, on all levels, be practical here. Some people are going to stay in these high rises. Some people are. And if you do choose to do that, and don't try and get out once this all starts, because you can almost guarantee that you will not survive that exercise once it starts overnight.
Trying to get out during the storm.
During the storm. Absolutely forget that. The safest place in that high-rise is going to be on probably the 3rd floor, in this case, if it's near the beach, because of the height of the storm surge. In other words, it's above the storm surge.
But not so high that you're going to be subject to those winds.
Now, I'm not in any way saying that's safe. I'm saying that that would be a last resort refuge, that you would hunker down in an inside hallway, inside the building, in a stairwell, and get mattresses out of as many condominiums as you can, put them around you, and ride the storm out there, and hope a lot of things. Hope that if there are shutters on windows, that they hang together, and also that in many condominiums, the interior walls are not built to the same strength as the exterior walls.
Right.
So once the windows fail, then the full wind pressure is on the interior walls, and they are in no way designed to withstand that wind pressure.
Well, now, if you're in that situation, whether you're in a house or an apartment, and let's say some of your windows go in, and you want to get out of the rooms where the windows are, so you go in your hallway. Do you open up the doors to the rooms where the windows are, or do you keep them closed?
I would just close all your windows, close all your doors, and try and barricade yourself the best you can in an interior room. We talked yesterday, again, we were talking about a much weaker storm. We talked yesterday about the idea, if you have limited supplies, barricading a room or shuttering a room with plywood. But I want to repeat what I just said about interior walls. You know that in most houses here, especially newer houses, you could put your fist through an interior wall if you were so inclined.
And if you lose a window in some other part of the house, some of those interior doors can rip off like a sheet of paper off a pad.
Right, you know how weak they are. So don't have any presumption of safety because you have closed the windows in one bedroom, for instance. Those interior walls, if there's a failure in the other part of the house, are going to be, as you say, just like paper. You need to find in your home a central point somewhere that you can absolutely get yourself down inside as strong a place as you can, maybe under a mattress, have mattresses handy, have anything you can think of handy to strengthen your location in your home.
Is there anything that could happen at this point that could either weaken or strengthen this storm?
Yeah, it could weaken or strengthen a little bit, but because there is a general fluctuation to storms anyway. There's a thing called a diurnal cycle. Bob Sheets almost said it a minute ago, but I think he thought nobody would understand the word. But what the diurnal cycle means is a daily cycle of pulsing of the storm. And we've seen it all along with the history of Andrew, where we've said a couple times it's dying, and then it came right on back, right? So even at this extreme intensity, there is some pulsating of the strength. So with any kind of luck, it may be on a little downward cycle. But that downward cycle takes it from a storm of unknown proportions to a storm of only slightly unknown proportions.
It's not going to go below a Category 4.
No, it's not going to go. No, I don't believe it's going to go below a Category 4. And conceivably, it could increase to a Category 5. Whatever we're talking about, the amount of devastation, the amount of personal injury, the amount of storm surge sweeping across the coast and even into the inland sections along Biscayne Bay is going to be massive somewhere in South Florida. There is no question about it that no matter what happens to the storm, it is not going to decrease enough that the action we're talking about is not necessary.
Brian, Marianne Murciano is at the Dade County Emergency Operations Center. Marianne, you with us?
Yeah, I am, Jerry. As you know, every hour at the bottom of the hour, we've been going live from here. At this point, we will skip the next half hour point because Governor Lawton Chiles is expected to make some kind of an announcement. We have no idea yet what he's going to be talking about, but at 3:30 we shall hear from the governor. Meantime, Virginia Sanchez, the spokesperson for Metro Dade, is here with me with some the latest information from Jackson Memorial Hospital. What do you have, Virginia?
That's correct. And we had mentioned earlier that those women who were 3 weeks away from delivery were encouraged to go to the East Tower. Of course, I'm referring to women who were already signed up to deliver their babies at Jackson or Jackson North. We are now requesting that those women who are pregnant and also diabetics
At any point in their pregnancy.
At any point in a pregnancy, that's correct. Should head also to the East Tower. In addition to that, those pregnant women who are expecting twins and are at their 7th month should also proceed out there.
Can you hear us?
Dade County Manager.
Marianne, can you hear us?
Yes. So many people are talking to me.
Okay. Marianne, it's Jerry in the studio. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I see you have the county manager with you. What's going on?
Yes, I do, Jerry. Joaquin Avignon is with us right now. We were talking just a minute ago about the shelter and the situation. There really is no such thing as a closed shelter, even though you do have some that are filled, right?
Correct. We have a shelter that's full. So what we're doing is routing people to other areas, but quite obviously, if we get into a situation where people come in at the last minute, we're not going to, leave them hanging out. So what we're doing is we're diverting people to other areas because that one shelter is full to capacity now.
While there's still time, but
Correct.
as the storm progresses, then that won't be possible either, right?
Correct.
Well, what's the worst that can happen if it's a full shelter?
The worst that could happen is that people are going to be in extremely tight quarters. But aside from that, we're going to accommodate everybody.
All right, tell me about the National Guard.
Well, the National Guard has been mobilized so that they're waiting for the storm to pass so that they can get into action. And they'll be working with our police department and fire rescue and assisting in the cleanup and enforcement aspects after the hurricane.
So the National Guard is there to help after the storm
correct.
passes. There's nothing that can be done at this point before.
That's correct. At this point, what we're mainly working on right now is the evacuation, trying to get people to evacuate, and we'll keep the buses rolling right up until we get winds that are probably in the range of 40 to 50 miles per hour or so.
I've been talking to a lot of the officials here, and the phones are ringing off the hooks. People are calling. As a matter of fact, we just announced 2 new numbers because you need rumor control numbers. What are people asking? What are the things that we can clarify once and for all while we're here on the air?
Well, I think the press has been doing a great job insofar as putting the information out. So a lot of the information that people are asking is basically information that the press has already given out. So one of the things that we want people to do is not to be calling unless they have specific questions. General information, I think the press has done a great job of putting that information out.
Okay, thank you very much. Dade County Manager Joaquin Avignon. And once again, those phone numbers, I don't know if we can see them on our screen.
We're totally boarded up. I saw no people, very few cars. So, of course, that's an area that's very important to get out of. And people there, from what I saw, were doing just that.
Although the part of the Grove, for instance, that we're looking at now is up the hill. This part of the Grove is fine.
Right, I'm talking about through Main Highway there.
Right,
that's
Main
an
Highway,
evacuation area.
The east side of Main Highway is an evacuation, or Main Highway kind of snakes around. But the bay side of Main Highway. You can see some of the dark clouds that are out there now. These are not threatening clouds in any way. In fact, I have the latest information out of the Miami airport, and we're experiencing here the edge of the storm in that our winds have gone around to the northeast because of the rotation around the storm, but they're only 14 knots, which translates to about 16 miles per hour. So there's nothing threatening out there, and there will be nothing threatening through most of the evening. Danny, what I was suggesting, remember the shot you had for me before? Have you got that again now? Just down in the Grove, where he's working on it over there, where we control the Grove cam here. I had another thought. I was going to tell you, just for your information, that we get a statement, a special sort of meteorologist-to-meteorologist statement out of the National Weather Service every day about this time. And the forecaster on duty talks about the fact that the hurricane looks like it will affect the southern fourth of the state, and our National Weather Service office here, which is co-located with the Hurricane Center there in Coral Gables, is responsible for forecasting weather all the way up as far north as Tallahassee. So they're concerned with Central Florida and North Florida as well. And he points out that once all this is over tomorrow, weather should return to normal. As a matter of fact, weather after hurricanes is often quite good. But his last line is, "Hope I will be writing to you Monday."
Incredible.
Because the National Hurricane Center is, of course, right here with all of us. There's the shot from the Grove, and you can see this business there at the corner of Main Highway and Grand Avenue, or maybe that's McFarland and Grand Avenue, well, all in that little intersection right there, putting up the shelters. Can we widen that out, Danny? Let's see how much movement there is.
What about the Hurricane Center, Brian? The place that we go to Bob Sheets to every hour.
Right. They have.
That's on US 1 at the top of.
Right across the street from the University of Miami.
Right.
Well, as you can
There's
imagine.
no windows up there, is there?
Well, there's windows, but they have very elaborate shutters, very strong shutters. But the concern there is that, first of all, once the hurricane leaves us, and moves to the west coast of the state and then moves into the Gulf, it's almost certainly going to be a hurricane for someone else as well, and they have the responsibility for warning those
exactly.
people.
And what about all of their tracking abilities, electronics, and all that stuff? Is that going to be affected by this storm?
They've already done this morning is they've moved some portion of their staff to Washington. And they're up operating out of the, not the Hurricane Center, but the National Meteorological Center.
And all the equipment is there as well.
Well, they have a maybe not total duplicate set of equipment, but a similar set of equipment there. So some of the hurricane specialists, but the people that are most familiar with hurricanes and the procedures operate out of our Hurricane Center here. So a couple of those have gone up there, and they'll take over responsibility if we lose access to the National Hurricane Center here.
A few minutes ago, we were talking about, you know, there was still some hours left to go get some supplies, though we're sure they're dwindling in all the stores. Channel 4's Susan Wallace was just out surveying a lot of that last-minute shopping. She's in our newsroom now. Susan?
Jerry, we actually found a grocery store that is open and is operating, and the shelves are stocked, and there are no lines. I'm very surprised. Take a look. It's the Top Value on Northeast 2nd Avenue at about 19th Street. We found lots of people there, but no long lines, which is quite amazing. Plenty of canned goods still on the shelf. The things that are missing, of course, bottled water, just like every other grocery store in Miami. Plenty of people at that AquaVend machine in the top of the, in the front of the store, but again, not long lines. Let's look at what's inside the Jackson's basket.
Fish steaks and little sausages and Spam and luncheon meat and tuna and apple juice, but no water. What are you going to do for water?
We have water home.
You got water at home. Are you keeping it in jugs already?
Yes.
Okay. How long do you think this food will last you?
About a week, I think.
About a week?
Yes. We're going to snack up some more.
You're going to get awfully sick of Vienna sausages, I'm warning you.
Let's take a look now at Dinner Key Marina. If you're looking for a slip, plenty to find here. At least 50% of the boats have pulled away from the dock. Unclear where they are because a lot of the existing ships and vessels that are in port, I mean, basically their captains are just kind of crossing their fingers.
The lines out on the boat. I see you're putting a bumper.
Well, it's just an afterthought, you know, just in case. But I think we're just kidding ourselves.
Did you try and move her at all? No.
No. I have no place to go. Where can you go? Take my chances here.
Are you living?
Actually,
you're not living aboard, are you?
Usually I am, but not tonight. I'm not staying tonight, of course.
So you found shelter for yourself, but nowhere for her.
No.
Okay.
But actually, the cruise magazine said it's best to go ahead and leave it in the marina. That came out as a surprise to me.
Did you ever see pictures out of South Carolina after Hurricane Hugo? Did you see those marinas?
I saw that.
They look like matchsticks, one on top of the other.
I know that. It's really sad.
But at this point, I mean, you basically throw your luck into the wind.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
And say your prayers.
And say your prayers, and hopefully the insurance is great.
That was Jim Cutler, the captain of the 38-foot Kaleidoscope, and he said it's really sad, but I mean, again, there's very little those boat owners can do except tie them down and tie them tight and just hope for the best. They're expecting a rise in the tides. Brian, I know you've been explaining this all day, but some of those pier posts that they're trying to attach their boats to are actually probably about 6 feet out of the water at this point. So if they get the storm surge they're expecting, those boats are going to be untied. So I guess, you know, they're just going to kind of lock them down and sit tight through the night. So that's the latest out of Dinner Key.
Susan, did you have any idea from talking to the people whose boats remained there where the other boats went?
Everybody's talking about up the river, but unclear. We drove over the river coming on the interstate, and there was not a boat in the water. We couldn't see any traffic on the river, so either these are incredibly prepared captains or they are in small alcoves along the South Dade coast, along Biscayne Bay. I really didn't see any evidence of any kind of, you know, boat trains moving up the river. We didn't see any action.
Well, I know that up the river, one of the things that could really kind of fool you there is there are marinas. Anchor Marine has a big facility up that way. So people that have been very responsible in planning for this event have already made reservations there and have moved up into slips.
At this point, it's too late to do something with your boat.
Yeah, because the bridges are down. If you have a big boat, you can forget it. We're trying to look, Danny, can we see anything out there? Just get a shot of Biscayne Bay. Let me just see a shot of Biscayne Bay on the Grove Cam if we can. We're trying to see if we can see anybody out there moving around. And I don't know if that boat that we see sort of in the middle of the picture is underway at all. I can't make that out. Maybe up there at the top of the screen, maybe a boat. But clearly, the boaters, at least in this part, the Coconut Grove area of Biscayne Bay, have decided that if the action has been done, is going to be done, it has been done.
Right.
And that is very intelligent action. The gentleman who said that he thought it was a waste of time is probably saying the right thing. You do your best and you hope for a little luck. And
you know, since we have Susan here, we were talking, Susan, a little bit earlier. Are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm right here.
We were talking a little bit earlier about the safest place to be in a house or an apartment or wherever you are. And we were talking about going into the bathroom if any windows blow in. And I remembered your experiences. Was it in Cancun?
No, it was on the island of Cozumel.
Right, and you and I guess Jeff Guerra, your photographer, tell us what happened. You were in a bathroom. That was your safe place for a while.
Remember, this was a Category 5 hurricane in 1988, I think it was September of 1988, and this thing was moving in on Cozumel fast. So we got to the island of Cozumel, and we immediately set up a command post within our bathroom because we were told that, you stay near the porcelain, stay near the appliances, and you're in a safe place. But about 45 minutes into the worst part of the storm, the sound was so bad, and at one point it's this relentless wind, and it's not something I thought I could survive, just the sound alone. And then hotel management came by the door and in Spanish told us that basically if we chose to stay in the room, we were on our own, that they weren't going to come look for us. So we ditched the hotel room at that point and left most of our stuff in the bathtub, only to come back after the first part of the storm. We snuck out of the shelter during the eye, which is not something you should do. But anyway, we went back to check on equipment, and the room had basically been blown in, and the bathroom window had been blown in, so anything we left there was soaking wet. But, if you can find an interior room with no windows, you're in good shape. You just hope that the roof holds up.
Yeah, and especially as Brian pointed out, if it's an interior room, you want to be sure that there's some strong walls, cement walls if they're there.
But any walls are better than nothing. There's no question about it.
Right.
But a small interior room is going to be your strongest point. We have Rob Pierce on Miami Beach, where amazingly, I guess, people are still trying to board up their homes. Is that right, Rob?
Yeah, that's right, Brian. Right now, you can see the roads out here are slowing down, so people are hopefully already off of the island. As you can see, this is one building, and you can see all the way down here that many of the buildings, many of the storefronts have been boarded up. Workers have been out here for some time today. We're going to walk over here and show you some of the guys who have been working all day to get this done before the storm hits. Jamie is a manager of these two buildings. Tell me about your efforts out here today. You guys have been working hard, haven't you?
Yeah, well, we've been out here since about 6 o'clock in the morning. We've got the two buildings here that we have to board up. Taking down awnings and 3,500 square feet of window space is a lot.
With a storm of this strength, you feel pretty confident that these boards are going to protect you?
Well, it'll do as much as they'll hold. From what my understanding is so far, that we've got about 140 mile an hour winds.
That's a good thought.
So we're just doing what we can to protect it. If it holds, great. If it doesn't, well, I'm pretty sure they're all insured.
Well, looking at your workers out here, are you guys all done at your own residence? Obviously, you're working hard out here today. What about your homes? Are you all protected?
Well, we all live here on the beach in an apartment, so there's not much you can do on that except evacuate. But we'll be out here till I figure about 8 o'clock, because we've still got a lot of work to go.
Okay, so you can see out here, Brian, that a lot of work still to be done.